Coming up next on West Side Stories, it's time for our Year in Review show where we look back at the most important stories of 2018.
We will revisit Proposal 1 and see why some people don't support the legalization of marijuana.
And we take a look at the immigration issue and why it's still in the news.
We also look back at the homeless crisis in Kalamazoo. All this and more coming up on West Side Stories.
West Side Stories is produced by students from the Multimedia Journalism program at Grand Valley State University. Support also comes from the School of Communications, inspiring thought, perfecting practice.
Welcome to West Side Stories. I'm Preston Donikuski.
And I'm Callie Hubbard. Well, tonight is our last show of the season, so we thought we would bring you something special.
That's right, Callie. Tonight is our Year in Review show. That means we'll be looking back at some of our best feature stories.
We will also be looking ahead to 2019 and the important issues that matter most.
We start tonight by looking at a story that will have a significant impact on Michigan residents, the legalization of recreational marijuana. Mackenzie Sorrell produced this story before the midterm election that made pot legal in Michigan. We show it now because it presents different viewpoints on the legalization of marijuana.
I think it's about time for this to happen.
I am not a proponent of legalized marijuana.
The proposal to legalize marijuana has made it to the ballot in Michigan. The proposal would make marijuana legal for adults 21 and over. Michigan residents would be able to possess up to 10 ounces of marijuana in their homes and buy 2.5 ounces at a time. It would also allow residents to grow up to 12 plants. Cannabis attorney Brandon Gardner believes that legalizing marijuana would benefit Michigan. He says legalizing marijuana will broaden the business market by creating new business opportunities in the state. But police are worried they would not have enough time to establish procedures for enforcing the law.
Well, just because it passes in November doesn't automatically mean that, boom, I can possess marijuana. It takes an entire year until it even goes into effect. I think that there are more restrictions than people think that they're going to be.
Gardner says Michigan has time to educate residents on what they can and cannot do under the law. He also says legalizing marijuana will benefit the court system by reducing traffic involving marijuana misdemeanor charges and minor offenses. Gardner says legalizing marijuana will do three things. 1,
free up the court system. It would, 2, permit anybody 21 years old or older to possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana. And 3, it would tax marijuana.
If passed, the proposal will place a 10% excise tax on recreational marijuana. $20 million of taxes will go towards research to prevent veteran suicide until 2022. The remaining funds would be divided up. 35% would go to the Michigan Transportation Fund for roads, and 35% would go to the School Aid Fund for K-12 education. But Superintendent Tom Tenbrink doubts the legislature will follow through with more funding for his school. He says it's a shell game where the government takes in the money but then uses it for something else. In other words, Tenbrink doesn't think that the school system will actually receive any additional money. Worse yet, he thinks legalizing recreational marijuana will harm the health of students.
As a nation, you would have thought we might have learned from the whole tobacco industry and the way that impacted our health as a nation and our students. For many, many years, we dealt with junior high, high school students smoking tobacco, and it took us years to help them understand why that was so dangerous for their health.
In Ottawa County, 8th grade students take a youth risk assessment survey. Results show students are trying marijuana at about age 13. Those who argue against legalizing marijuana, like Tenbrink, say making it legal makes it easier for kids to get.
We've seen in the past with medical marijuana is making marijuana more accessible right or wrong. It's making it more accessible to kids. So when we legalize marijuana, I think that the trend would probably stay the same, and it would just give those students easier opportunity to get that than it was before.
I do believe it can be used for medical purposes, but I don't believe it has any place in just a recreational part of our society. And in schools, we're going to just be back to, unfortunately, having to discipline students who bring marijuana to school and set up their own shop and selling it.
Both Officer Bennett and Superintendent Tenbrink say they are most concerned with how to protect students, and that means focusing on schools. But Bennett says it also means watching for a new kind of DUI.
I think the impact is, again, going to impact our youth more than anything. I think that we're going to have to really tackle that with education in the schools. We're going to have to tackle that with drivers and driving under the influence and what those things mean. And we're all going to also have to tackle it on our end, being able to test for this stuff.
It's still probable cause to search a vehicle if the officer believes that there's marijuana in the car.
Marijuana will still have its restrictions, and law enforcement will have many difficult decisions to make if marijuana becomes legalized.
Not any different than tobacco, it's just marijuana.
I realize that it's not the most popular of topics, but it's something that needs to be done.
While it's still not clear that voters will make marijuana legal in Michigan, it will be one of the most closely watched ballot proposals this November.
In Grand Rapids, I'm Mackenzie Sorrell.
Big story in the news this year, especially just before midterm elections, was immigration. This story by reporter Eli Ong is still relevant today because President Trump threatened a government shutdown if he didn't get support for his border wall. Here's the story.
One of the most talked about midterm elections in recent years.
With the 2018 midterm elections behind us, a leading topic of debate, immigration, seems to have disappeared. President Trump emphasized the importance of border protection running up to elections, which some opponents suggested was a political move to rally Republican voters.
1,500 to 2,000 people try crossing our borders illegally. We do a very good job considering the laws are so bad.
President Trump says current immigration policy needs fixing. One fix involves new restrictions on immigrants seeking asylum in the U.S. Polly Divin, a professor of political science at Grand Valley State University, says that it's already difficult for immigrants to legally obtain U.S. citizenship.
Well, I think a lot of people think that immigration is fairly easy, and legal immigration is very, very difficult. I mean, you have to go through a lot of steps.
According to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, in order to gain citizenship, immigrants have to go through a complex process. Immigrants are required to live in the country for at least 5 years, pass a series of oral and written tests, and go through multiple background checks.
It's very, very challenging to become a legal immigrant. So sometimes you hear people saying, well, I don't want to have undocumented immigrants in the United States, but the fact of the matter is we make it really, really hard to be a documented immigrant.
Apart from her classes at GVSU, Divin also helped set up naturalization ceremonies. These are ceremonies where immigrants finally receive their certificate of U.S. citizenship. Divin thinks that these are great opportunities for students to learn about how immigration works.
Oh, I think it's great to learn about the immigration process and see how diverse and how interesting the group looks, and to see the achievement. I mean, there's so many different people from different walks of life.
There were immigrants from 34 different countries at the ceremony, spanning from Mexico to Vietnam and down to South Africa. According to USCIS Supervisory Officer Douglas Pierce, who helped conduct the most recent naturalization ceremony at GVSU, the ceremony was a great way to introduce them officially as American citizens.
That this is a thoroughly American process. It is a way of welcoming people from all over the world, giving them the opportunity to show that they can be great citizens, and then giving them the opportunity to take the oath of allegiance. I think it's a wonderful process.
While some immigrants can take advantage of the naturalization process, some do not have the luxury of waiting years to gain citizenship. According to Divin, Americans should decide if they want to loosen immigration policies or be more understanding of where some immigrants come from.
And so I think that sometimes people don't understand that we either have to ease up a bit on the process, or we have to be a little more understanding of why people come here.
Divin says the United States has significantly reduced the number of refugees that it takes in recent history.
You know, the cap of people we allow to come as refugees used to be closer to 100,000, and now this year it's just 30,000 people. So that doesn't leave many people to come here. At the same time, refugee crisis is huge. I mean, 25 million refugees in the world today and 5 million from Syria. So we're really not sort of doing our part compared to some of the other countries.
The dictionary defines a refugee as a person who flees to a foreign country or power to escape danger or persecution. Divin says that other countries have taken many more Syrian refugees than the United States.
And that since the Syrian civil war began, the United States has taken about 10,000 Syrians, and Germany's taken over 500,000.
More so than Germany, Middle Eastern countries like Turkey and Lebanon have taken in millions of Syrian refugees, most of whom live in camps like this and tent shacks or tents with little running water. President Trump says he will continue to address immigration policies that he says are unfair. Trump says the border wall is an important part of his strategy to restrict illegal immigrants from entering the U.S. Critics of Trump's immigration policy say the president is using immigration to bolster his own political agenda. From Grand Rapids, Michigan, I am Eli Ong.
2018 was a year we saw an increase in hate crimes. None were more horrific than the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Reporter Mackenzie Sorrell showed us how the Jewish community in the greater Grand Rapids area was coping with the news. We'd like to show you that story again right now.
My first thought was, oh no, like not again.
They said anti-Semitism was on the rise and no one believed anyone until 11 people were killed.
97-year-old woman, what could she possibly have done to him? Or a married couple, he was 88 and she was 86.
The shooting in Pittsburgh was the worst hate crime in our country's history. The shooter walked into a service at the Tree of Life Synagogue where he shot and killed 11 people and wounded several others. Just 2 days after the shooting, a vigil was held at Grand Valley. Over 250 people gathered together to show support for the Jewish community.
In some ways, it's an interfaith vigil with Jews and Christians and Muslims and agnostics and Hindus all together crying out against hatred like this. So I think the community together as a whole is coming together stronger in support of our Jewish community here on campus.
Allison Egren, the president of Hillel at GVSU, spoke at the vigil. Egren, who is Jewish, says she appreciates the support, but she also says there were plenty of warning signs that were overlooked that could have prevented the shooting.
I think we can't look past those small things. I mean, a year or two ago, a bunch of Jewish community centers were getting bomb threats and no one was taking it seriously. Jews were constantly saying anti-Semitism was still relevant and on the rise and no one took it seriously. And it took until 11 people getting murdered for people to take it seriously and for now there to be news coverage and for now people to be talking about it. But why weren't they taking it seriously a year or two ago? Why did it take for people to actually be murdered for people to take it seriously?
Democrats say the shooting could have been prevented if there were more gun laws. Republicans say the shooting could have been prevented if there were more guns. Egren doesn't completely agree that the government could have prevented this.
The government does need to do more, but so does society. We don't need to rely on the government to be our parents and to be our teachers.
Egren says she wishes she could preserve the interfaith tolerance that was displayed at the vigil. She says it's important to call hate speech out when you hear it, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Egren says that small hate comments may seem harmless, but it only increases the magnitude of anti-Semitism, which could lead to another shooting.
If it could happen there, it could happen anywhere. And it's frightening, it really is.
Every single day, all of us kind of go through our day with that in the back of our minds. Like I know when I'm wearing my Jewish star necklaces and someone makes a comment, there's always that fear of what's preceding their comment about my necklace. Like, is it going to be like, oh, I like your necklace, that's it? Or something else.
According to the Anti-Defamation League, anti-Semitism has risen 57% since 2016. Even though the hatred is rising at an alarming rate, Rabbi Shattuck says he can't live his life in fear.
I think that if we are too fearful and we don't come to synagogue or come to temples or any house of worship, then the anti-Semites and the hate mongers, they win, and I don't want to have them win.
Rabbi Shattuck is encouraging his congregation to continue to come to the temple. He says that they are making security changes for safety reasons. The temple will now have 2 security guards at the doors for every event and service.
This event wouldn't have happened if the synagogue in Pittsburgh had had some security on Sabbath, on Shabbat morning, but we, like them, try to open our doors to everyone. We want to be seen as welcoming, a place of refuge, a place of comfort, a place where you come and, and offer prayers to God. And so we don't want it to feel like it's, a fort. But they and we and synagogues around the country have no choice but to make changes.
The decision to add security guards is not popular with everyone.
It's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to feel the need to show up armed to go pray to God, to go to a religious ceremony, to go celebrate a life cycle. I mean, it's ridiculous that this is what it's come to.
Egrin says she can't believe there is still so much religious intolerance in 2018. While the Holocaust was almost 80 years ago, she doesn't think that people understand that the hatred for Jews still exists today.
I don't think we'll ever stop being killed for being who we are, unfortunately.
Reporting from Grand Rapids, I'm Mackenzie Sorrell.
Homelessness is another issue that plagues Michigan cities like Kalamazoo. Just 2 months ago, reporter Linnea Martinez took a look at how some homeless people are asking the city of Kalamazoo for better treatment.
My name is Daryl, D-A-R-R-Y-L-E-I-C-H-L-E-R, and I've been diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, cancer of the liver, cancer of the kidneys.
Eichler is one of hundreds in the city of Kalamazoo who are currently experiencing homelessness. For the past week, he's been living in a tent on a piece of land owned by a local shelter. He says that it wasn't his choice to be there.
That's how I became homeless, because I was in the hospital for 6 months and lost my job, and they put a boot on my door, and the landlord said if I give him $4,800, I could get back in, but I no longer had a job.
Eichler isn't the only person struggling. In mid-August, a group of individuals who are homeless set up tents in Kalamazoo's Bronson Park.
I just want to feel safe. Kind of want to feel normal. See, we all feel normal here with each other because we know each other.
Scott is one of around 60 people taking part in what he says is a peaceful protest. The goal? To bring awareness to issues surrounding the homeless population.
A couple weeks ago, the city tried to pass some ordinances that criminalize homelessness here in the city. We were successful in the fact that they did not pass those ordinances. And then we realized that there's a bigger problem in our county, in our city, and we're advocating for the homeless community as a whole.
They said it was against city ordinance to pop up a tent in the city limits, but yet they don't put any limit anywhere close enough for you to get shelter, food, water, bathroom, things of that nature.
If not Arcadia, what's the next step from here? What is it that folks want next?
Protesters had been trying to negotiate with Kalamazoo city officials since they started staying at the park. It hasn't been easy.
We were discussing an option that the city had given to us about moving to a different location instead of being in the park. During the meeting, we pretty much came to a unanimous decision that we are staying put. We're also protesting against the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission, which has been blatantly not helping, or there's issues with the way staff has been treating the homeless population that goes through their doors.
I was staying at the homeless shelter, the Gospel Mission, and it was horrible. They've got 150 plus men laying on the ground with prisoner mats who don't all stay sanitary.
The Kalamazoo Gospel Mission is an organization that runs a men and women's shelter in the city. Pastor Michael Brown says that he isn't fazed by the criticism.
I've heard some of the comments that they have to say, and when the comments come up, I say, that's not true.
They stay down behind that door. They have a couple rooms and bunk beds back there.
Jalissa Martin has been staying at the mission with her 1-year-old son since the end of June. She says that while she's grateful for what the mission is doing, there is still room for improvement.
It's not as clean as I would want it to be. So what do you... I can't put my son down to crawl, and he's just now crawling, starting to walk and everything. I can't put him down to crawl, let him start walking or none of that. So it's irritating. And a lot of women have to have little babies, have to keep their kids in the strollers because the floor is so nasty.
When asked about the conditions in the shelter, Pastor Brown says that they're working on new improvements. He also adds that there is only so much they can do with a small amount of space.
Anybody can stay at the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission. Where we run into problems at is where people come because of the numbers of homeless that we have and the available space. Then we quickly run out of bed space, and so then we'll have mats, and people don't want to sleep on a mat, you know, so they'll say, well, they wouldn't let me stay at the Gospel Mission. No, we let you stay where we had space.
Pastor Brown offered to show us the piece of land the mission provided for those in the Bronson Park encampment. This is where Eichler is living, and he has his own opinions on the mission.
I stayed in the mission. The only thing that they gave me there at the mission was a goddamn old, thin, what do you call it, mat. That's how I got the cough. It wouldn't give me a pillow, wouldn't give me...
Not everyone agrees with Eichler.
This area right here is awesome. Awesome. The Gospel Mission and the pastor and everyone there, like, they really, really do a lot for people.
Back in Bronson Park, protesters express their frustrations and hopes for the future.
I feel like people are kind of like pushing us to the side, like, you guys are homeless. You got in this situation, so we're going to leave you there. We don't deserve to be here. These kids don't deserve to be here.
Nobody around here wants to be out here getting food given to them. Everybody wants that normal life where you work for what you got. Everything you want to get, you pay for, your house, your rent, electric. Everybody wants that.
I feel like finally some voice has been put out there and we're being heard, and some things are actually being said that mean something to us as the people.
The tent city disappeared almost overnight as city officials made their final decision. Protesters could no longer stay in the park. 14 remaining protesters were arrested, including County Commissioner Shannon Sykes, who had joined the protest a few weeks in. Reporting for West Side Stories in Kalamazoo, I'm Linnea Martinez.
So far in our Year in Review show, we've painted a pretty bleak picture of our state, and while there's no doubt we are struggling with social issues like homelessness, there are some bright spots. This next story by Sam Hall is a good example.
On certain afternoons, in a stoop along Ionia Avenue, you may meet Anthony Lazar, a man with no home but a passion for art.
I'm an artist that does metal sculptures right downtown on the street. I was staying at Meltrotter Mission. 2010, I stumbled into Heartside Ministry, started painting and doing things, bought a baby welder and started creating these sculptures.
Lazar, like dozens of other homeless and transitioning individuals living in southern Grand Rapids, has turned to Heartside Ministry's art program as a place to take a break from life on the street. Heartside's art studio, which is open to the public from 9 until 3, Monday through Friday, is piled high with sewing projects, paint-covered canvases, sculptures, and pottery. Anyone is welcome to drop in during the day, whether it be to browse the countless pieces of finished artwork or to stay a while and create something of their own. The ministry is brimming with materials to satisfy a wide range of creative needs. Heartside is not only an art studio, however. Many visitors are drawn to the ministry's other programs, which include counseling, tutoring, and free GED testing, to name a few. From the corner of Weston and Division in Grand Rapids, I'm Samuel Hall.
And that does it for our Year in Review show. But before we go, it is also Callie's final show with us here at West Side Stories. Callie, I think I speak for everyone behind the scenes, certainly myself. It's been an awesome, 2 years now?
Pretty much 2 years. It's crazy how fast time has gone. I've learned so much here, and I'm so grateful for the producers, Professor Ford, everyone that has ever been involved with West Side Stories. You all have taught me so much, and I plan on staying in the broadcasting industry after college. I don't know exactly. I don't have anything lined up yet, but yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure this semester.
It's been awesome. You're obviously always welcome back. Well, for West Side Stories, I'm Preston Onikuski.
And I'm Callie Hubbard.
We'll see you next year.